All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the PuriFi Pros podcast. I'm here in the studio today with Michael Hunter.
Hello, everyone.
Michael Hunter is the CRO of PuriFi Labs, and the reason we're here today is really to give back, right? I mean, you and I have been in the industry for how long? Do we want to say?
I don't. I mean, you're probably better. About 30 for me.
In the air purification industry, good 20 years for me. 30.
Yeah.
Are we okay saying that?
Yeah.
30 years for Michael. And obviously, you know, things have changed significantly in the past 2 years around air quality, but not just air quality, the health of the indoor environment overall. And what we've also seen, I don't know about you, I mean, share your thoughts, but over the past 2 years, we've seen people trying to get to the right information to make the right decisions, but oftentimes struggling.
Yeah, they're just going where they get the answer that they want, but they're not sure if that was really the right answer.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we talk about things like proof, not promises within PuriFi, but, you know, today we're going to try to keep it broad and just say, you know, if you haven't found what you think you need, or if you've struggled and maybe you haven't found anything yet because you're struggling to find the right information, we're going to try to clear the air on that subject for people.
Absolutely. And with that, it's so many of the comments like, I thought I found what I needed, but now I don't believe it really is working. And so they thought they found their answer. And so clearing the air is probably going to help them maybe make a different decision or seek it in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that reminds me of a story we'll get to in a second about one of our biggest distributors and customers told us his experience with his 84-year-old mother and trying to solve air purification for her, but she asked some questions that he was challenged by, which kind of says, number one, even within our industry, people are still challenged with some questions from consumers, and so we're going to provide some education there as well, but also we want to make sure that that consumer asks the right questions, because his mom did in that story, and like I said, we'll get to that in a second, but the other reason that we're here is it's still a really important subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Always has been. Just now there's a spotlight on it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, you know, talking with people about clean air, and you know, there was a certain amount of interest, there were a certain amount of requirements, but it is so much more broad now because of what we've been through. And some of the things that we're going to try to demystify for people are some of the things that you'll see posted online, like what's a MERV rating? Yeah. You know, who is MERV a person? You know, that's a lot of the questions that we get. Is MERV a person? What's a MERV rating on an air filter? What does that mean for me? What should I choose for my home? Does it matter depending on the system that I have? Does it matter depending on my outcomes? Should I use an in-room air purifier? Do those even work? If so, how do I know? You know, what are some of the other things that you hear from customers when they're trying to kind of work through these issues?
Yeah, it's they're also confused a little bit. I mean, short experience I had just the other day. I walked into a big box store, and I was looking for a MERV rated filter because we were telling customers, and they changed the rating, so they came up with their own thing. So now it's even getting more confusing.
Yeah.
So what people are always asking is, hey, do these little in-room things work? How often should I change my filter? What size of filter and type of filter should I have? And it's crazy.
Yeah. And how does my HVAC system or heating and air conditioning system, how does that affect my air quality in my home? That's another question. Absolutely. We probably need to answer.
And that the HVAC system is it's kind of elusive to people. It's they think about their heating system as their thermostat. That's the thing that they point to. That is their knowledge of their HVAC system until it has to be replaced. And it's just funny. Years ago, a thermostat manufacturer, people were asked, "What type of HVAC system do you have?" And they mentioned the thermostat manufacturer, which didn't even manufacture heating or air conditioning. So
right.
Yeah, it's just it's elusive to people, and so they don't understand how their air works, how it's filtered, and what's coming out of the vents. And they're familiar with the vents, but how it all ties together and what that does to their air quality is really, that's like magic to them. It's like it's an illusion. They don't know.
Yeah, it's like a black box, because it's true. All you have to the average consumer is a little thing on the wall. The rest of it is hidden. Or maybe you have something in your basement that you see every once in a while. There's this giant metal box that makes noise, or there's this box on the side of your house, but nobody really understands what's going on the inside. But it is hugely important. And I think about, we've got cold air coming out of the registers, but some people, they look up and those registers are dirty. And to me, that's a red flag. But do people know that it's a red flag? We need to call some of those things out so people can say, okay, if I'm getting dirt on the air supply side building up on my register, that means air is coming from my HVAC system, or it's going right through it. That means it went through a filter, through my HVAC system, back into my space, and likely back into my lungs.
Yeah, there's so many components to it. And, maybe their ductwork came apart, and they're saying, hey, my heating and air conditioning system, I need my ducts cleaned. But they'll get them cleaned and not knowing that the ducts maybe came apart, and it's just bringing in air from the attic, the basement, the garage, wherever the air is flowing. And so, hey, I need an air cleaner. Let's find the source first.
True.
Yeah, your air cleaning is great and it's necessary, but if we continue to just open the door and let the dust storm in, we might be going backwards in our progress there.
Yeah, absolutely. Very true. It reminds me of a story of one of our customers, and I think we'll cover this another time, but he, for 20 years, was living in a house. He's a dentist and does well for himself, has a nice business, could have solved the problem that we eventually found out about many years earlier, but never knew because he wasn't measuring what was going on inside of his house. So just like you said, pinhole leaks in the ductwork, you don't know they're happening, or maybe big leaks. Maybe it was never sealed right in the first place, and all of a sudden he starts measuring what's going on, which is crucial, something that people should take note of. Measure what's going on inside of your home. And he had massive amounts of invisible particles inside of his house, and he'd lived there for 20 years. And it happened especially during the wintertime. So every year, he's just consuming those particles, and he believes, did affect his health.
Absolutely. Yeah, as we know, particles are one of the biggest leading causes of cardiovascular issues.
Right.
What's interesting about that, people say, well, I have issues during the winter, but not during the summer, which is crazy. Because, why do cold, flu seasons, all the things, why do they hit during the winter? What people don't realize is when you're heating, you're actually drying that out even more. So we're in a very dry climate where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. But during heating season, you could possibly have drier air than the Sahara Desert inside your home. And those things are creating some very nasty issues with your lungs, your tissue that you got that's trying to fight against them.
Right.
So, yeah, that's tough.
That's true. And that's an important note for people as well as we think about, the truth about the air we breathe. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is particles are a big deal. Like you said, if somebody goes online right now, and anybody who's listening, I'd encourage them to do it. Search particles heart disease. The first thing that comes up is most likely the EPA. And the EPA's warning correlates particles in the air, breathing those particles, and I believe they say in their link online, I could even just bring it up right now, research by EPA and others has found that exposure to increased concentrations of PM 2.5, which is particles, you get that on your weather app. We'll demystify that, for people too. But over a few hours or weeks can trigger cardiovascular disease-related heart attacks and death. So when we talk about this being an important subject, right from the EPA, straight from the oracle called Google, it tells you this is a serious problem. And if you don't know what's going on, then, it can build up over time. And this just says a few hours or weeks.
Yeah, those measurements are key. And until really recently, people haven't really paid attention to measuring what's going on inside. And for years, decades even, we've had these alerts. We'll be driving down the freeway and they'll say, hey, whether, air quality alert, air quality advisory, please carpool or, do something, to help reduce it. And even on the Weather Channel, it's like, hey, here's what the pressure is today. Here's what's going to happen with the rain, humidity, and all that stuff. And they always include, here's what's going on with air quality today. And people are like, oh, air quality is good or bad, but beyond good or bad, what does that actually mean? What's it doing? And there's 3 things that the air quality is measured on for outdoors. It's PM 2.5, PM10. Those are particle sizes, lower numbers, smaller particles, that, like you talked about. And then ozone. Some people think, oh, I've got a device that has ozone. That's good. Well, if they're measuring outside and they're saying ozone is a bad thing, then maybe we should pay attention to really what's going on with that.
Right.
And is it getting in my house from the outside? And the answer is yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And as you talk about that, it's interesting. You talk about that on the freeways. Probably almost all of us have probably driven down a freeway and you see that sign, pollution alert, stay indoors and carpool. And every time I see that, I'm like, stay indoors and carpool. I get the carpool, attempt to reduce the emissions outdoors. Totally get that. Yeah. But stay indoors. Again, let's go back to the EPA. If people go search online at the EPA will tell you that your indoor air quality is likely to be, without the right technology, it is on average 5 to 100 times worse than outdoor air. So go indoors where it's 5 to 100 times worse, and then, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So, but what people don't realize from that is the reason that occurs is if you don't have a system to solve for all that junk that's coming in, open windows, infiltration from the cracks, stuff coming in from the attic, it's just going to come in, it's going to get locked in, and it's going to stay there because it'll come in, but it won't go out.
Yeah. And depending on the year and construction of homes, people don't also realize this. Sometimes those older homes, because it had gaps and things, it would actually let air back out. But some of the new construction homes are so tight because of building codes that it's like putting yourself in a Ziploc bag. As soon as you shut everything up for the night, now you're in this bubble. And whatever you brought in is staying with you.
That's
and
true.
What are we doing to affect what's in there?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's even worse.
Oh, that's a really good point.
All the off-gassing of carpets, paints, everything that goes into construction of a home, now you're living with it.
Yeah.
Ever wake up in the morning and go, man, I'm plugged up. What's going on? That's why people say, oh, I'm going to open the window and bring in some fresh air.
You're right.
And
right.
What if there's fire season right now? Is that fresh air?
Right.
Then I close the window, it stays in there with me.
Yeah, on that same subject, and this all comes back to paying attention. And it's not just, hoping. Hope is not a strategy, right? And it's not just taking somebody's word for it when it comes to the management of your inside home or business. Another example for me is I think about whether knowing or not knowing, letting in fresh air or not, which we'll talk about. Is outside air really fresh, and if so, when? But, I have some neighbors who happen to smoke. And what I found out was my particle counts, because I'm an IAQ nerd. That's indoor air quality, right? I'm an IAQ nerd. So I have sensors in my house. But again, that's important. The sensors would go up every night around 9 o'clock. And I'm like, what is going on? We're not cooking. We don't have Glade plugins all over our house or scenting devices because those are pollution, just an FYI. You're going to breathe those in. Every night it was going up, and I'm like, what the heck? And I went outside, and I could smell cigarette smoke. And I thought, well, what's going on here? And I found out that my neighbor will prop their garage door open, and they will smoke in their garage, or they'll smoke on the side of their house. And then it was coming in through the attic intakes of my HVAC system, which is where homes get outside air from, and then it was bringing it into my house, and my particle counts would go up. Luckily, I have a system in my home that can solve that problem, and get that out of the air, but I would have never known it. So think about the secondhand smoke implications of that. It's not just somebody in the room with you. It's not somebody in the car with you. It could be your neighbor, and it's coming in, and you're breathing that in. And my particle counts went up 10 times.
Wow.
Just by that.
That's incredible. I was curious about some of people's reaction to indoor quality. Over the last couple of years, it became like hypersensitive. Everybody seemed hypersensitive about it, to one degree or the other. They weren't worried about it, or they were really worried about it, and at least more educated. One of the things that was curious to me is over the past few years, running into people that really said, I'm not worried about air. I'm good. I'm this old. I've made it this far, and I'm fine. And then, get into a little bit of the education and said, well, that's fine. You're an adult. You breathe at a certain rate. But this gentleman that I was visiting with about his HVAC system, I said, but your dog, which you care extremely about, I said, they breathe at a different rate, like more rapid. So they're bringing in those particles. I said, so it really does affect more than you. So you breathe slower, I breathe slower, unless I walk upstairs and I breathe, huff and puff a little bit more than I used to. But then that meant something to him. I said, I said, like my kids, I said, when they're smaller, they breathe at a different rate, a higher rate. And so those particle counts, we breathe over 2,000 gallons of air in an 8-hour period of time.
Right.
2,000 gallons of air. If we did that with water, we drowned, right? Mm-hmm. We drowned almost immediately with that much consumption. Yeah. But we're bringing it in. And once he learned that, he said, you know what? Tell me more about this, because I do probably care about my dog more than I care about myself. Yeah. I just kind of dismiss it as I'm not the guy that's going to happen to, but I don't want it to happen to my dog or my kids.
Yeah. So. Yeah, very true. And as you were saying that, I was thinking that 2,000 gallons of air every day that the average person breathes, that doesn't even include the people who are exercising.
Right.
And now think about how much exercise we're doing at home, the migration to the home, the work from home, all those sorts of things. That's 3,000 gallons of air a lot of times. There's somebody who exercises. I have a spin bike at home. I'll get on that and exercise, and I'm breathing even more. The animals are breathing at a faster rate, so per capita for them, who knows what the equivalent is, but they're probably closer to that 3,000, 4,000 gallon example scenario. And then on the waterfront, you brought up water. I got purified water here. When I was a kid, I drank from the tap.
Or the hose.
Or the hose, right? You're outside and you're playing, and it's like, oh yeah, hose. I don't care. I'm just going to drink from the hose. And it tasted terrible. But you would drink it anyway. It tasted like metal, or it tasted like the rubber hose. Oh, yeah. And then as, industry matured and society matured, all of a sudden that became taboo. It's like, you can't drink from the hose. And I remember when somebody came to my house for the first time as a kid, and they're door to door, they're selling water purification, whole home or under the sink or whatever. They put some different chemicals in the water. They tested it, and there was like real metal shavings dropping out, and it turned purple, which was obviously the wrong color. And then all of a sudden, it was bottled water, Culligan Man, Sparklets, or all the different brands. That's what my parents, had in the house from then on. And we're only drinking bottled water because we found out what was in it. Yeah. That was the key difference. And the world has now found out what is in the air that we breathe every day. It could be bacteria, viruses, mold, dust, dander, and any particles could carry a virus, obviously. That's been a major topic of conversation. But, we might consume a gallon of water every day. Maybe. And that's people who drink a lot of water. Yeah. We consume 2,000, 3,000 gallons of air every day. Seems like we should know what's in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really is the education piece. Part of being in this industry for 30 years, you get to see a lot of different, I would call it just perspectives on it. So mechanics, technicians, installers, just depending on their perspective of what it is and what education they have, and they'll suggest certain things to homeowners. And because, it's like you go get your car fixed. And if you don't know a lot about automotive, you're just going to trust what the person tells you. Mm-hmm. And hopefully they've got a conscience and they're going to tell you the right thing and they're going to do the right thing for you. But they're only really, even if they're honest and they're straightforward, they're only as good as the information they have. Yeah. And if they're not experts on it, it's the latest, greatest thing that they heard.
Mm.
And they're going to offer it to you, whether it's for water purification,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's for air, whether it's your auto mechanic. And so the education piece out there that we're trying to get out there is, what is that truth? What are people really breathing, and what's going to affect it? So I love the story. I want you to tell the story of our customer, the distributor, and his mom now, because he's like, I'm going to do the right thing for my mom. And she had a great comeback.
Yeah, and that really brings home what you're talking about, and people need to understand what's going on in their environment. But it's funny, we have a distribution partner, with PuriFi, and he's very successful, always works to do the right thing for customers and for clients. And these distributors, they aggregate a bunch of different heating and air conditioning parts, products, solutions, and then they sell them to contractors. And he runs a $200 million business. Successful business. They've grown it. He's the head of that business. And in the midst of the pandemic, prior to us ever spending time with him, he went to do something good for his mom. He had a certain technology that he was going to put in her home, and it was supposed to take care of the whole house. And it was going into the HVAC system, the heating and air conditioning system. And he's over there setting it up for his mom, trying to do this right thing. And he's in his early 50s, and he's successful, and he knows a lot, about the industry. But at that point in time, he had what he had, right? And he goes in her house, and he's hooking it up, and he's showing it to her, and she says, Timmy, because it's his mom, right? He said, Timmy, I have a question. And he goes, okay, great. And she says, how do I know if it's working? And he says, well, and this is the response that most people end up with, especially in central, solutions to your HVAC. He says, oh, well, you see this light on here? That light will be on. And then you will know that it's working. And I laugh because his mom's response, she looks at him. This is the story we got from him. She looks at him and she says, Timmy, I'm sure you're very good at what you do. Right? Which is like, this is mom talking. The guy runs a big business and all this stuff. I'm sure you're very good at what you do. But don't put anything in my house unless you can prove that it's working.
Oh, prove.
Yeah. Prove that it's working. Now, she's obviously a very intelligent, questioning woman, but she's not an indoor air quality expert. She's 84 years old. She may be very technologically advanced or not at all, but her question, she says, or her statement, really, don't put anything in my home unless you can prove it. And he goes, okay, I'll try to figure something out.
Yeah.
Now she has technology in her home, happens to have PuriFi, that proves to her every 90 seconds with laser particle counters that are measuring air quality. But prior to that, he didn't have any place to turn, even though he was trying to do the best that he could.
It's what's so real about that conversation is because of the industry we're in, we talked about the thermostat on the wall. That's the people's knowledge to what we're doing. When I'm working with contractors, I said, imagine this. Imagine going into a homeowner's residence, and even if they've been a client of yours for years, and walking up to them and say, you know what, we're going to do something today that's a little bit different. We're going to take your thermostat off your wall. And if you have a phone app that controls your thermostat as well, controls the temperature, we're going to delete that off your phone. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that your HVAC system is set to run at the temperature you want, and you'll just need to trust us that we're going to maintain that temperature. So,
right.
So Jerry, you wanted it at 72 degrees. Trust me, when I leave here, it'll stay 72 forever. How's that going to go for you?
Not super well.
You're going to say, I've trusted you in the past, but get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, to date, on indoor air quality, people have gone into customers' homes, including people going into big box stores, and saying, you know what, I just believe what's on that box. I believe what they're telling me is that it's cleaning my air with no indoor thermostat, so to speak.
Right.
Proving what's going on.
That's true.
So Timmy's mom,
yeah,
ultimately, she knew what was right.
Right.
You know what? My thermostat tells me it's 72 degrees. I feel 72 degrees. We're good.
Yeah.
So
that's absolutely true.
That measurement's huge.
Yeah, that's a great example because, Everything else, separate from the temperature and all that, everything else is they just want you to gamble on a promise.
Oh, yeah.
It's like roll the dice, thumbs up, pat on the back, thank you, and, I promise everything's going to work out. And, some of the other things that we hear sometimes when people try to describe a device that cannot prove its own performance is they'll say, well, you'll feel it, you will sense it. You will see that light on. And I think that's one of the key takeaways, for this discussion from today and just this idea of the truth about the air we breathe. The first thing you got to do is find out where you're at. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. And that's anything in life is first recognize where you are right now and then figure out how to make that situation better. Same applies to air quality. And so what we say is just measure it. Just get a baseline of where you sit today and then look for things that have the confidence to prove their performance.
Absolutely. This one last point on this measurement thing. When I started working with PuriFi, a friend of mine who I've worked with for over 15 years, respectable company over in the Northwest, and he asked me, he says, so how do you know your device works? I said, you know what? I'm definitely going to answer that question for you. I said, but let me ask you a question, because my daughter works for him. She works in his business. I said, so the device that you put in your business and the one you put in your home, I understand is the same, but my daughter told me what they had. And I said, how do you know that's working? And I said, I'm going to take away the qualifiers of this. You can't say because I know the light's on and because I feel something different or sense something different or smell something different. I said, taking those away, how do you know that what they're promising at the manufacturer level, their claims, how do you know it's actually doing what they say it's doing inside the room, inside the office, inside your home? How do you know that? And he put his head down. He says, man, I wish you wouldn't have asked me that question. And he told me a brief story. He says, I was at home, and it was during the busy season, and so I wasn't going to have my guys come over and, maintain the system and change the filters out, so I did it myself. And what I found was the device that I asked them to hook up in my home was never wired correctly. I'd been telling people that this device was helping me with all the virus stuff that's going on for a year and a half. I was pounding my chest on how proud I was of this. The thing was never working. He said, and I checked the one at the office. They never wired that one up correctly. And he says, I said, you had a placebo effect.
Right.
And he says, you're right, I did. He said, I believed what the box told me, and I believe once it was installed, all things were good. He said, my light wasn't even on. I was like, man, I said, don't tell that to anybody else but me.
Right.
I said, but how we know is we measure it.
Yeah.
And we measure it 24/7, and it's on all the time. We know what's going on.
Absolutely. And that placebo effect is never going to help you if those particles are still there, right?
Yeah.
You can think it all you want, but as you continue to consume it into your lungs and bloodstream day after day after day, it's not coming back out, once it's in there. So crucial to measure and probably check that it's installed right if you end up buying something. But start at least with the measuring. Get a sense of what's going on inside of your environment. And there's an important note on that subject as well for people, I think, that they should understand is, where do you measure? You want to measure in the breathing zone, which in and of itself is a term that everybody should understand. The breathing zone is 3 to 6 feet in the air. That's where you want to measure, because that's where we breathe all of our air. We kind of joke, I don't live in the ductwork. I don't live with my face on the floor. Maybe after a bad night or something, but nobody lives like that permanently, or most of the time. You're breathing right here. I'm standing up, or I'm sitting at a desk, or I'm sitting at the dining room table. That's where you want to measure. And you want to make sure that you also have sensors that can measure the particles accurately, because there are some sensors out there that are just wildly inaccurate, and that won't help you, especially if you're trying to get a sense of where do I sit today. But I think that idea of measuring is the crucial starting point for anybody inside of their home or business.
I believe that 100%. The other side of that measuring is, because you're measuring, is when something else was tested. This is something that, after all the years that I've been in the industry, and I was really a skeptic when it came to air quality.
Hmm.
I'm kind of skeptical about most things that are, that come out and claim something but can't prove it. Kind of like Timmy's mom a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the curious thing was I learned from you and from the folks that do all the engineering how everything else is tested. And it was curious to me that when all the testing is going on these devices, they weren't tested how you would actually install them.
Right.
I'm like, well, what do you mean you didn't test it through the ductwork? Because you're supposed to mount it in the ductwork and test it in the room. You didn't do that?
Right.
Like, oh no, we tested in a box that was 1 by 1 cubic feet. And by the way, we put 2 devices on the thing.
Right.
To get the result we wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, you can talk really intelligently to that because you're the one that educated me on it. So a little bit of that testing is, we're sensing in the room, but when they're making the claims, where are we testing this thing?
Yeah. No, agreed. And you think about the interaction on the consumer. So think about the person in their home who wants the right thing for their family, for their animals, for themselves, whatever it is. And maybe they want to reduce the risk of the particles, the pathogens, the aerosols, those kinds of things. You've got somebody in your home with a piece of literature, right? And they're saying, here's the thing for you. And meanwhile, you don't know how it's been tested. You're just taking somebody's word who also took somebody else's word for it and never asked for the actual test report. And that's especially important when it comes to viruses and bacteria, because those things have to be tested in laboratories. We can measure particles, test for particles inside of people's homes, even the aerosols, but not what they are. So those things have to be sent to a laboratory. But, we live in 1,500 square foot homes or 4,000 square foot homes, whatever it is. And that means you have a 15,000 cubic foot, 40,000 cubic foot home, and some technologies tested in a 1 cubic foot box for their performance, or a 5 cubic foot box, or they're tested in a room that's maybe this size, so it's bigger, congratulations, but they're moving the air 10 to 100 times faster than you'll ever move it in your house. And so we just say, again, after the measuring, measure. But if somebody's going to make claims about how their technology performs in the real world on viruses, bacteria, et cetera, ask for the test report. And then if you can get that test report, then the other thing that people need to ask themselves is this person going to install it and use it the same way it was tested? If the answer to that question is no, you probably will look for a different solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Love that education piece. That's what has helped me.
Yeah.
Sure.
So for today, as we think about, the air we breathe, there's a lot of particles in the air. And sometimes you might see them because the light is shining through a window, and now you can see those particles. And then, when the light goes away, you don't see them anymore. They haven't disappeared. They're still there. And you're going to breathe them in. But the other thing is, we're breathing 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of air every day. That's way more than the water that we consume every day. So we need to know what is in that air. And then, if people are going to make claims about how their technology performs against bacteria and viruses, ask for the test report and then ask yourself, is this going to be installed in my home or business the same way it was tested? Those few things will put you way ahead of where you are today in order to make your home a healthier environment.
Totally agree.
Perfect.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Well, we appreciate everybody listening today. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
For joining us today, and we'll be on again soon.